This is the International AQA certificate for GCSE, and we're looking at inheritance. We know already that our characteristics are determined by the genes that we contain, and we also know that there are different versions of those genes. So we inherit our genes from our parents. We may get a gene for blue eyes from our mother, and maybe a gene for brown eyes from our father. But the key point is that we have inherited a gene for eye colour in one shape or form from both parents. Whichever one was the strongest is the one that we actually have as our visible phenotype, the characteristics that we see. So we're going to have a look at how that happens here. So we've seen that families can look similar, but we don't look identical to each other. And we know from our video on meiosis and cell division that the gametes that are produced during meiosis are unique because some variation within the genetic chromosomes has taken place. But it's these are being passed on that gives us our variations within us, although we don't look exactly the same. So in humans we know that there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, and the pairs of chromosomes are referred to as homologous pairs. And that basically means if you're homologous, they are of equal length. So you've had one chromosome of one length from your mother, and you've got another chromosome matching up of the same length from your father. That's a homologous pair. Contained on those chromosomes will be genes for a range of characteristics, and there can be different versions of that gene. So it may be that you've got one gene for brown eyes on one pair, and you've got another gene for blue eyes on the reciprocal pair matching up. So this might be the one that you got from your mother, this might be the one you got from your father. Here's the brown eye, here's the blue eyes, and you'll see that they match up next to each other. So this is now a homologous pair of a chromosome. And there'll be 23 of these pairs in every single one of your nuclei, of every single one of your cells, except your sex cells. These different versions of the genes are called alleles. That's a very important term to know. So it was allele for eye colour, a brown allele, or a blue allele. Now, depending on the combination of genes that you've inherited, we describe the combination in one of two ways. If your homologous pair of chromosomes contains two genes that are the same, so maybe two brown eye genes, that we describe as being homozygous. So here's a pair of chromosomes, maybe chromosome set number 2, for example, out of your 23, and on it we have a gene from mother, a gene from father, both of which are the same. They're both for brown eyes. So that therefore means that when you pass that on to the offspring, they would have the same again. Or we could be homozygous for blue eyes as well. So they're both homozygous because they both have, in their pair, because they both have the same gene on each of the chromosomes. You as an individual could inherit a different version of a gene, a different allele from each parent, and this would be described as being heterozygous. So here is a homologous pair of chromosomes, because they are of equal length, doing the same job. But at this time we have a gene for brown eyes, and in the opposite matching position we have a gene for blue eyes. So that means you are heterozygous. So what we don't know is from which of these, what would you actually be? What would your phenotype show? And that's determined by which one is the stronger of the two genes. Is blue or brown stronger? And rather than saying stronger, we describe these as being either a dominant gene or a recessive gene. So, a dominant characteristic is one that you only need to have one copy of that gene for it to be expressed as a phenotype and used. So it doesn't matter whether you get it from your mother or your father, if you have one copy, one allele, which is dominant, your phenotype will show that dominant gene. And we represent those with capital letters. Dominant genes are always done with capital letters. Recessive alleles, recessive versions of genes, you only express those in your phenotype, your physical features that you see, if there are no dominant alleles present at all. So you've got neither your mother nor your father gave you a dominant allele.